A story starts with a whisper. Long before a single word was printed, the tales of the West were told around campfires. They were spoken in the quiet of a lonely cabin, under a sky vast and full of stars. These weren't fancy stories. They were accounts of survival, of courage in the face of the unknown. Men and women pushed past the edge of the map into a land that was both beautiful and brutal. They told stories about real people, trappers, scouts, and pioneers. Figures like Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett weren't just men, they became legends, their adventures growing taller with each telling. Their lives were the raw material for the myths that would follow, the first stirrings of a uniquely American narrative that spoke of grit and independence. These early tales were more than just entertainment. They were a way for a young nation to understand itself. The frontier was a place of testing, a crucible where character was forged. The stories that emerged from it were about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They faced harsh weather, unforgiving landscapes, and the constant threat of danger. Listening to these accounts, people back east could imagine a life of freedom and challenge. The stories provided a sense of identity, painting a picture of a nation built by strong hands and stronger wills. They were the folk tales of a country finding its feet, the first echoes of the cowboy, the lawman, and the outlaw who would come to define the West. The spoken word has a power all its own. Before books and magazines could carry these stories far and wide, they traveled by mouth. A trapper might share a tale of a narrow escape from a grizzly bear at a trading post. A settler might recount the hardship of a long winter to a newcomer. These weren't just idle chatter, they were lessons in survival, passed down from one generation to the next. The details might change a little with each telling, but the core of the story remained the same. The frontier was a place that demanded respect. It was a place where a man's word was his bond, and his skill with a rifle could mean the difference between life and death. The legends of the frontier grew from this fertile ground. They captured the spirit of the age, a spirit of expansion, of risk, and of boundless possibility. The stories were simple, direct, and honest, much like the people they described. They spoke of the vastness of the plains, the majesty of the mountains, and the quiet dignity of a life lived close to the land. This was the foundation upon which all Western fiction would be built. It wasn't about glamour or fame. It was about the fundamental struggle to carve out a life in a world that was still wild and untamed. These first echoes of the frontier were the seeds from which a grand American tradition would grow. Eventually, those campfire stories found their way onto the printed page. In the 1800s, America was hungry for adventure, and writers were ready to provide it. Dime novels and pulp magazines began to appear, filled with thrilling tales of the Wild West. For a few cents, a person living in a crowded city could be transported to the open range. These stories were fast-paced and full of action. They featured daring heroes, dastardly villains, and dramatic showdowns. The West was no longer just a place on a map, it was a stage for epic conflict, a world of black hats and white hats where justice was swift and certain. The ink-stained pages brought the frontier to life for millions of readers. This was the era when the Western as a literary genre truly took shape. Writers like Owen Wister gave readers a hero to look up to. His 1902 novel, The Virginian, is often called the first true Western. It told the story of a stoic, honorable cowboy who lived by a simple code. He was a man of few words but decisive action. The Virginian wasn't just a book, it was a blueprint for the classic Western hero. Wister took the raw materials of frontier life and polished them into a compelling narrative. He established the tropes that would become familiar to generations of readers: the quiet hero, the loyal horse, the school marm from the East, and the final, inevitable gunfight. Then came Zane Grey, a writer who painted the West on a grand canvas. His stories were filled with breathtaking descriptions of the landscape. He made the canyons, deserts, and mountains characters in their own right. In books like Riders of the Purple Sage, Grey combined thrilling adventure with a deep appreciation for the beauty and danger of the land. His heroes were often men haunted by their past, seeking redemption in the vast empty spaces of the frontier. He wrote dozens of novels, and his work became immensely popular. Gray's stories solidified the public's image of the West as a place of epic struggle and romantic grandeur. These books and magazines did more than just entertain. They created an American mythology. The characters they introduced, the noble sheriff, the misunderstood outlaw, the steadfast cowboy, became iconic figures. People began to see the West through the lens of these stories. The fictional world of gunslingers and cattle drives started to feel more real than the historical reality. It was a world where a man could make his own way, where honor was worth fighting for, and where the line between right and wrong was clear. The ink-stained legends of Wister and Gray shaped not just a genre, but a nation's perception of its own past. It wasn't long before a new kind of storyteller came along. In the early 1900s, moving pictures were born, and filmmakers quickly realized the power of the Western. The wide-open spaces of the frontier were perfect for the new medium of cinema. The action and drama that filled the pages of pulp novels could now be shown on a giant screen. The transition from print to film was a natural one. The first Western film, The Great Train Robbery, was made in 1903. It was only about 12 minutes long, but it was a sensation. Audiences were thrilled to see a story of outlaws and a posse come to life before their very eyes. The silver screen was ready for the West. Filmmakers looked to the popular novels for inspiration. The stories of Zane Grey and others provided ready-made plots and compelling characters. Why invent a new hero when one already existed in the pages of a best-selling book? They began adapting these stories, turning literary heroes into screen icons. Men like William S. Hart became the first cowboy stars. Hart was known for his serious, realistic portrayals of Western characters. He often played a good bad man, an outlaw with a heart of gold, who ultimately chose the path of righteousness. He brought a sense of authenticity to his roles, and audiences loved him for it. The silent film era was a golden age for the Western. Without spoken dialogue, the stories had to be told through action and emotion. The stark landscapes of the West provided a perfect backdrop for these silent dramas. A chase on horseback across the plains, a tense standoff in a dusty street. These images needed no words to convey their meaning. The camera could capture the vastness of the prairie and the isolation of a lone rider. It could show the grim determination on a lawman's face and the fear in a villain's eyes. The Western had found a new home, and its stories were reaching an even wider audience than before. As films grew more sophisticated, so did the Westerns. Serials became incredibly popular. Each week, audiences would flock to the theater to see the next chapter in the adventure. They would watch their favorite hero face impossible odds, only to be left in a perilous situation at the very end, a cliffhanger. Would he escape the burning barn? Would he survive the fall from the cliff? People had to come back the next week to find out. These serials, with stars like Tom Mix and his wonder horse Tony, kept the spirit of the Western alive and kicking, ensuring that the cowboy would ride on as one of America's most enduring heroes. Generations have passed since the first dime novels were printed. The world has changed in ways those early storytellers could never have imagined. Yet, the trail of the Western continues. The stories of cowboys, lawmen, and pioneers still hold a powerful grip on our imagination. Why does the West still call to us? I believe it's because these stories speak to something fundamental in the human spirit. They are tales of courage, independence, and the search for a place to call home. They remind us of a time when the world seemed simpler, when a person's character was the most important thing they owned. The West represents a promise of freedom and a chance for a new beginning. The themes of the Western are timeless. The struggle between good and evil, law and chaos, civilization and wilderness. These are conflicts that we still face today, just in different forms. The lone hero who stands up for what is right, even when the odds are against him, is a figure we can all admire. The Western provides a moral compass, a set of clear values in a complicated world. It tells us that honor, loyalty, and perseverance matter. These are not old-fashioned ideas. They are the bedrock of a decent society. As long as people value these qualities, the Western will have something important to say. The genre has also proven its ability to adapt and evolve. It is not frozen in time. Over the years, the Western has been re-examined and reinterpreted by new generations of writers and filmmakers. The classic stories have been told from different perspectives, and the old myths have been challenged. This ability to change is a sign of strength, not weakness. It shows that the Western is a living tradition, one that can still spark new conversations and explore new territory. From the classic films of John Ford to modern television series, the Western continues to find new ways to tell its timeless tales of the frontier. In the end, the trail of the Western leads back to the land itself. The vast, untamed landscapes of the American West are a powerful symbol of both beauty and challenge. They remind us of the incredible journey of our nation and the spirit of the people who settled it. The stories are a part of our heritage, a connection to our past. They are more than just stories about cowboys and Indians, they are stories about us. They are about the dream of a better life, the courage to face the unknown, and the enduring hope that just over the next rise a new adventure is waiting. That is why the West still calls and why it always will.